I really enjoy an opportunity to speak publicly about my situation. It's a way to connect with people. I'll never forget the first opportunity that came my way was just a year after the event had happened, and there was a play at our local university, and it was about acquaintance rape and reporting and things like that, and they really wanted a panel of experts afterwards to talk about what that felt like to be a survivor, what it felt like to report, what it felt like to go through the system. And so through a friend of a friend, they heard about my situation and called to ask if I would participate. And it was the first thing of that kind that I had done, but it felt like I had a voice, and maybe that something that I knew or felt could contribute to a greater good or a cause or a light bulb moment for someone. So I sat on that stage feeling a little timid, but what I saw happen in that room was this open conversation, this dialogue after this really terrific play that really outlines what it's like to be a victim and all of the things that you have to deal with afterwards. And then the dialogue began, and people were feeling open to ask questions. Maybe they knew someone that had been offended and they wanted to know how they could support them. And so at that moment, I remember feeling like, wow, having this voice, having this story positions me in a way to really provide support and hope. And I don't know, I just enjoyed it, but at the same time for me it was a catharsis because I got to talk about what had happened, and it wasn't just my situation anymore that had happened to me, but I got to allow people in, and so we were experiencing it together, and there was something incredible about that for my soul that made it not just my shameful, embarrassing story any longer. And from there, I was asked to do a few other things for Victims' Rights Breakfast. I spoke at a variety of press conferences on behalf of people. At that time, Missouri was working on a constitutional amendment, and so it really changed the game and gave victims rights. You always hear about you have the right to remain silent, you have the right, all the defendants, but the victims didn't really have any rights in the system. And so for me, to be able to make change in our state, in our Constitution, was a really neat opportunity. And so I remember speaking on rallies about that. I spoke before Missouri House of Representatives, and since then I've been able to speak nationally and federally to beef up some of those protections for victims, but it balanced the scales out a little bit. So again, for me, it felt like I can use this tragedy for some kind of good. And the first couple of times that I did a more inspirational presentation and really shared the details, what I found again was that it just transformed. The energy in the room just lit up in that common bond that people have, that human need to be close and connect. And there's something very palatable that happens when that occurs. And to see grown men and women with tears in their eyes as they're looking at you as if you could be their child, their daughter, or a friend, or someone that sits next to them at church, and they realize how valuable life really is and how hard it is sometimes. To join in that moment with people, I just honor it and I hold it so close. And from there, I have just really been able to do it, monthly all over the country. And I've even had people ask from other countries for me to come and speak. And it's such an honor, again, to share such a tragedy where people feel almost embarrassed to hear it. But for me, I think they feel like I'm embarrassed to say it. But I am able to use it and frame it in a way, again, of a connection, of a deeper level of that human connection. And technically, when I speak to conferences or different agencies that are looking for tools and processes to better serve the victims or the people that they're working with, it's really fun for me to kind of compare and contrast. In my situation, there were 3 different jurisdictions that the event happened in, 3 different counties. And each county handled it differently. There was some good, there was some bad, and there were some really ugly moments. But I never felt the need to blame anyone for things that didn't go as well. I looked at it more as an opportunity of how can we change these systems again so somebody else doesn't have to experience this, or no other family is left in this situation or sitting out without information or with no one there to guide them. So technically, I've been able to instruct and develop programs and help agencies, shore up their systems, because particularly law enforcement, they get into that field to protect and serve, and they have to deal with the defendants and those perpetrating crime, but they also get to deal with the victims. And I think when I pivot that for them and remind them, I know your heart is good, that's why you're in this work, and here are some easy ways to help victims. Like, for example, giving them options where they want to sit in during an interview, making sure that they have their basic needs met, like a bottle of water or a tissue or a comfort friend, and just helping them to feel a part of the process instead of as if this is happening to them, but that they are joining with them to find some resolve. And I found it doesn't always mean a conviction is necessary or some certain outcome, but when victims and their families are included in the process, giving dignity and giving a chance to be heard, there is justice in that. It may not be exactly what we would think would be justice, but they have been heard in the process, and that is a very simple way that I can share my story as a tool for agencies to learn how small differences really change the game for the survivors they're working with.